Good afternoon and welcome to the July 14th School Board meeting of the Natchitoches Parish School Board. If you will please stand. Mayor Ronnie Williams will be opening us up in prayer, and Sheriff Stuart Wright will be doing our pledge. Mayor, if you'll step to the mic over there, and Sheriff, if you'll do the same.
Good evening. Let us pray. Gracious God, our Father, we thank you for allowing us to gather in this space to conduct business pertaining to the well-being of the youth in this parish. I pray for each of the school board members that their comments and actions will be rooted in endeavoring to obtain the best outcome for our youth. We ask for your guidance for our superintendent, teachers, counselors, bus drivers, cafeteria employees, custodians, and any others who affect the direction of Natchitoches youth. We ask you now for safety and security for our schools and pray that decisions are made to keep our children in a safe and fulfilling learning environment. We ask these blessings in your Son Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much. If we could have our roll call, please.
Mr. Danzy?
Here.
Mr. Matoir?
Here.
Mr. Benefield?
Here.
Mr. Garner?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Present.
Mrs. Guidros? Mrs. Broadway?
Here.
Mrs. McGaskey?
Here.
Ms. Palmer?
Here.
Ms. Phelps?
Here.
And Ms. Harvey? Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you so much. I did receive a text that said our overall volume is low. I know everyone's excited to talk loud in those mics. So if you'll please pull the mic forward, speak directly into it. And in the interest of time this evening, we're going to rearrange the agenda and move forward with the new business item first, and then we'll circle back to old business. So item 4A is announcement to call an election. On May 24th, the climate of student safety sadly shifted again with the tragic school shooting that happened in Uvalde, Texas. 19 elementary students and 2 teachers lost their lives on campus that day. Prior to May 24th, the most precious resource that God has blessed us with, our children, were targeted in numerous other school shootings. Almost any mother I know can tell you where they were when the shootings took place at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Lakeland, Florida. No matter what side of the aisle you sit on, no matter how you feel about gun control or lack thereof, no matter if you're wearing blue or red, you can all agree that keeping our children safe at school is a top priority and should not be underfunded. Every mother and father expects their child to return home safe every single day that they go to school. You may ask yourself, whose responsibility is it to keep our kids safe at school? There are no laws set mandating that it's anyone's sole responsibility to provide a school resource officer for each campus. Overall, it is the responsibility of the Natchitoches Parish School Board to care for our kids when they are in our care. Our district has been very blessed that the Natchitoches Parish Sheriff's Office has shouldered roughly 75% of the burden by providing 10 resource officers for our 15 public school campuses. It is the intent of the Natchitoches Parish School Board to present a 5-meal property tax that will be on the ballot in December of 2022. There are portions of the parish that will not see any change in their property taxes. Our board just rolled back millages in the northern part of the parish and also taxing District 9, which is Ward 1 around the city, will not see the full 5 meals. We rolled back that millage as well. The tax would allow for the following: a minimum of 1 SRO at every public school campus. We currently have 10 for 15 campuses. Approximately $1.4 million would be allocated for the salaries and benefits of school resource officers. The remaining balance would be used for security equipment, artificial intelligence, thermal scanning, and facial recognition software. A meal tax for a 10-year period starting in 2023 and ending in 2032. We do not anticipate that this tax will have any excess funds due to the ever-changing shelf life of technology. It doesn't take long for cameras and equipment to become obsolete. This tax will never go into the general fund. That is simply against the law. This is a dedicated tax. Should the cost of providing officers be less than expected, the remaining money will be spent on additional security equipment or training. The priority is adding 5 more officers and heavily focusing on badge pass entry systems, which are very costly. Law enforcement, whether that be Sheriff's Department, City of Natchitoches, NSU, they will be the supervising force of the officers, but the school board would manage all of the funding. This will not require the hiring of additional personnel, such as new administrators, management, outside of the additional 5 officers that will be needed to cover all 15 campuses. Please do not confuse this tax as our first and only attempt at school safety. The NPSO has supplied SROs, training, and much cooperation with all of our previous endeavors. This effort is greatly going to be enhanced with these measures. Each school does have a plan in place for crisis management, lockdown drills, etc. These too will be greatly heightened with the coming school year. This tax will enable us to better secure our schools and protect our children. This tax is only for 10 years. The public will have the chance to scrutinize or possibly non-renew this tax upon renewal request. Currently, there is no tax. I'm going to repeat that. There is no tax collected in this parish at this time that is dedicated to providing SROs to our schools, nor the security equipment for school safety. This would be a brand new tax. As your school board president and a mother of a student in our school system, I do not want to stand behind a podium with a well-crafted statement apologizing to parents, saying that we failed our students and we could have done better by providing full-time school resource officers at each campus with enhanced security technology. While none of these measures will absolutely guarantee our children's safety, they will greatly increase their chance of survival should there be a school shooting. At this time, we will start with Mr. Garner's end of the table, and we will allow each board member to speak uninterrupted about this very important matter. Mr. Garner.
Thank you. I see this as a chance that we need to allow us to move forward with this because, I mean, we say it won't never happen in our parish, but you never know. It could. It happened, these other places it has happened. I'm sure they said the same thing. I appreciate what the sheriff's office has already done, but I really think when we put this to the public, the way we're putting it to them, that we need to do what we can to make our schools safe, and their grandchildren and great-grandchildren and the students that attend our school as safe as possible, and put forth the effort to do so. So I will do what I can to support this issue and push it forward.
Thank you, Ms. Palmer.
Well, I came to the first meeting back in last month, and I am for putting security in our schools because we do not want a repeat of what happened in Uvalde. But I got some information, and I'm just not sure yet if I'm on board just yet because I was told that we may have other resources that may be available to us. So I just have some questions about, have we filtered through all our other options before going on with this? Because this is a tax, and like my community, people are struggling. So it's not a no, it's just that I want to know what more options we have. Because I don't want to put out a tax and right now, inflation is rising, and like I said, people are struggling already. So I don't want to put another burden on my people in my community.
Okay, Mr. Dancy?
It's a very critical need, I think, that we do provide sufficient safety for our children. You know, I've got grandchildren in various parts of the state, and I think it's a very good idea. But I do commend the people that have worked on this. I would like to see us approach this in a way that it would be beneficial and not put all of the burden strictly on the taxpayers. But I think we should, I'm for it, but I think we should open our eyes to all activities. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Ms. McGaskey?
I am in favor because it is a priority that we have security at all of the schools. However, I would like to see if there are any other options besides another tax, because people are struggling. Times are hard. Gas is up, groceries up, everything is more expensive now, and to burden people with an extra tax is going to be difficult. If, as I said, it's a priority, we need it. We see what's happening all over the United States as far as shootings, and I think we need to take care of our children. Safe is number one. I have a grandchild in the school system, and our children are our number one priority, and we need to do what we can do to keep them safe. And so I would like to see any other options researched that can assist with us getting it passed. And another thing I was concerned about with the schools over on the campus, if campus security could assist us since it's located on that campus.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Mr. Benefield?
Thank you. I think you've heard from 4 different board members, and they're all saying the same thing. Natchitoches Parish School Board, we have a mission, but our job is to safely transport children to and from school and safely provide them the best education that we possibly can. And so we can't ignore what's going on. We have to look at all areas and avenues of sourcing, funding. I think this is a very worthwhile endeavor. I'm glad that there's been members of the community and leaders in the community that have taken this on. I think that we can't back away from the fact that this could happen anywhere, and it will not necessarily happen as it plays out in the media. It could be anything that could start something like this. There's been some promises of some alternative funding from the federal government. There's also been some other things that have been discussed. I think we need to look at everything. I'm not saying this is bad. I'm not saying this is good. I'm saying that this is actually something that is a very start of something that's going to be a path. This is going to be something this is not going to be a single yes/no answer. And so I agree with what my fellow board members have said, is that we need to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the children in Natchitoches Parish, but we also have to be cognizant of the fact of the taxpayers, because several of them are going to, or all of them are going to ask the same questions. How much is this going to cost me? What am I going to get from this? And how is this going to work? Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Broadway?
I think aside from the events that President Phelps mentioned, we have seen how school resource officers have become an integral part of our children's school day. They have provided security services and just that great connection between our officers and the students for years now. And then when you add on to that the situations that we have seen where having a school resource officer seriously could have helped, I think it becomes invaluable to be able to have a school resource officer at every single location, which is not something that we have at this time. Additionally, I think it is our responsibility to make sure that the citizens of Natchitoches Parish have the opportunity to decide for themselves whether they want to fund this through this new millage. This is not something that we're deciding. This is going to be something that the citizens of Natchitoches Parish get to decide for themselves. They get to determine whether this is going to be something that is worth their investment. So I'm in favor.
Thank you. Ms. Guidros?
I'm tending to agree with all the other board members who have already spoken. This is not a Natchitoches problem. It's a national problem, and it's critical. We have to take care of our children and keep them as safe as we can, whatever it takes. But I do agree that to put the full burden on property owners at this time, with the recession like it is and the economy going the way it is, it's our duty to look at other sources of funding. And I have to believe that there's some federal dollars out there that we could come across. We just have to exhaust all of those avenues before we say, taxpayers, will you fund this? Because I'm afraid we would get a resounding no. They want it, but they can't afford it.
Thank you. Ms. Harvey?
I agree with all of my board members, and I understand the sales tax. First, I want
Property
to say
tax.
we are blessed that nothing like this has happened in Natchitoches Parish that happened in Texas with the less resources that we had at the schools with the children. But I understand the sales tax, and I understand there may be other options. And with the times and everything is so hard for people, it is actually up to the parish, the residents, if they want this or not. I'm for it because I believe in protecting our children. That's what we're supposed to do, protect our children. At this time, I don't have any grandchildren in the school district anymore, but to me, all the children are my grandchildren. And I feel like I'm all for it. But is there other options or other things that we can do to raise the money instead of doing the sales tax? I'm all for it. But I think it has to deal with the residents. Leave it up to them, let them vote, and let's see what happens. But is there other options? Let's try it. Let's do it. Because we're here to protect the children. That's what we're here for, to make sure the children are safe. Because if they know they're safe, they're going to learn. But if they're scared, they're not.
Thank you, Ms. Harvey. Mr. Metoyer?
I'm all for safety of the kids and what we have to do, but like everybody's saying, we need to look at all our resources. Just this morning, I'm an early bird. 2 o'clock this morning, I was watching the national news, and they're talking about when they go in session, looking to see if they can find money to send to these states to help out with resource officers and security. So we need to make sure before we go with a tax that we that we have looked at all our resources where we can. Because we go past a tax, then the federal government or the state bring money that we can hire these. What we're gonna do? Then we can pass the tax. We got that's right there. And if we go with the tax, the thing that y'all send us with what it would cost or whatever, we need to be true to the public, what it's gonna cost. Because what we got, what you sent us, that's not true to what the actual taxpayer, because it looks on that, it looked like just people that own homes gonna pay for the tax. That's how it's on the paperwork that I got. It don't say nothing about that people own property. Everything is with homestead exemption. And They're saying it, they tell it, some people say, well, it ain't gonna cost no, if you don't own a home, it ain't gonna cost nothing. Well, if you're renting a home, the renter's gonna, the homeowner gonna put the rent on there. And you can't file homestead exemption on a rent house. It's just the house that you live in. And safety and education is one of the priorities that we have to give to the kids. But we need to look at all our resource before we go to a tax with that to the to the public.
Thank you.
Lastly, but not least,
Best for last.
I think everyone around this L, used to be a horseshoe, would concur that it's a no-brainer that we should have safety for our students and faculty and everyone who's a part of our system. So the ideal of should we have safety, everyone agrees, but the big how comes up. How do we accomplish this? How do we get this done? You cannot educate people that's afraid, and that does not feel secure. So we know that. But however, I'm like my fellow board members. I'm not sure if this is the best way. I myself had conversation with some of my constituents, and just about a month ago, I guess it is, when we got the good news that we are going to save you all some money because you all were so good to us by allowing a millage, and they were happy about that. So now I'm going to turn around and tell them that I'm going to meet with them and we're going to talk. But I'm not sure how it's going to go. And at the end of the day, I'm going to do what's right. That's what I'm going to do. Now, if what's right gets me unelected, then I have to meet the master one day. And if he says servant well done, I'm fine with it. But on the other hand, if I don't support this, then that's just going to be how it is. But I'm hoping that we will make sure that at the end of the day, we have to secure our campuses no matter what. Whether this goes forward or not, we got to find a way to make sure that when people come on our campuses, that they feel secure. And that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Reverend Harris. I do want to, Mr. McGuire, if you don't mind, you had stated that some of this information was untrue, and I don't want the public thinking that we are putting out information that's not true. So what part should we correct?
On that, they
Right here.
just have homes for homes. Those, people that own, just like me, what I own just property with nothing on it. I've had to pay property tax, but it don't say that if you own your property worth $100,000, what are you gonna have to pay for that? The sales, the five
Property.
without a homestead. And if a person own $100,000 home that they're renting out, they don't get homestead exemption. So
Okay.
that need to be stated out, that what it's gonna cost is, say for instance, just like a business that owns own a building. They have to pay they have to pay tax on that.
Right.
So we need to put down that if you got $1 million home, $1 million building, what will you have to pay, what will the millage be on that?
Right, so right now, one
That's
second.
right there with the homestead.
Right. But we
What
do
your
have
homestead,
it-
but we need to put down what it'll cost that if you, can't file homestead exemption on your home.
Okay. The way we have it worded right now is value of house and lot. So maybe we can put out something more comprehensive that includes business owners with land and business.
Those will be the questions that will be posed, that's correct.
Right. Dr. Eloy? If you'll just let us finish, we'll supply you with anything that you need. Are there any members of the public here tonight that wish to speak on this matter? Okay. All right. This is an intent to call an election. This is not a voting item tonight. You will have time to contact your school board members, and we beg you to please contact us. We want to hear from you. So you can contact us with any of your questions. The official vote by the board will take place on August the 11th. If the intent passes, we plan on following the schedule of events required to make it to the December 10th ballot. And we do have to read this notice to the public. Notice is hereby given that at its meeting to be held on Thursday, August the 11th, 2022 at 5:00 p.m. at its regular meeting place, the school board office, boardroom, 310 Royal Street, Natchitoches, Louisiana. The parish school board of the parish of Natchitoches, state of Louisiana, plans to consider adopting a resolution ordering and calling an election to be held in the parish-wide school district of the parish of Natchitoches, state of Louisiana, to authorize the levy of an ad valorem tax therein. So again, we have roughly a month to gather all the information you need. Public, we really, truly want to hear from you, so please do not hold back with any of your questions, criticism, request for information. We need to hear all of it because our children do need what's best in their interest, no matter the cost.
Ms. Phelps, can we canvass the parishes, not necessarily around us, but others that have full-time SROs on every site and find out how they do it and what source of funding they use and how that works?
If I may,
Sure.
when we contacted our attorney, our bond attorneys, we actually got this. There is a diversity of ways that that they fund it. For instance, Rapides Parish to our south funded it through a sales tax, a 1% sales tax, through half-cent sales tax. I'm sorry, through the sheriff's department. St. Tammany, which is actually kind of in line with the modality we're looking at, did it through a 2 mil tax. Now, mind you, St. Tammany has a much larger tax base, so they were able to do it with just 2 mills. There have been several parishes that have gone the property tax route. There have been several parishes that go the sales tax route. There are parishes that use the sheriff as the entity. There's parishes that use the school board as the entity. Furthermore, you also have parishes where they have no SROs. You have parishes that have SROs, and the school district, since the beginning, has funded that through some internal mechanism, probably their general fund. You also have some parishes that the sheriff's department funds it completely out of their general fund, and then you have a spectrum within that of percentages. Some parishes, it's 100% the sheriff, 100% the school district, and then some it's 30, 70, and vice versa, and it spans the spectrum. But we do have that information through, what's our attorney with the bond attorney?
Foley and Associates.
Foley and Associates, yeah, they sent us samples of about 20 different parishes that we can share with the board on how they did that, and we can disseminate that to y'all. So suffice it to say, there are probably 64 parishes. There's probably 64 different unique ways that they've all funded it.
And not all parishes have it.
Correct.
Not all parishes have a full-time resource officer at each school.
And another item, Ms. Harvey was saying sales tax. This is a property tax, not a sales tax, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and so with that said, with property, based on the voters in Natchitoches Parish, what is that percentage that would actually foot the bill versus those that would vote for it? Does anyone know? How many people would pay property tax versus those that would not pay property tax?
it could get that. It could get.
Yeah, that would
it
be
could
a
get
question
that.
for Mr.
And I
Page.
think it
Yeah.
should be.
I think we should
Yeah.
literally talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't need to shirk our responsibility to make sure that we safely protect the children of Natchitoches Parish, but the voters are going to want to know all the facts, and I think it's imperative that we have this information available.
Absolutely, I agree with you. And then as well, we need the information for the amount of voters who will not be affected because they were already rolled back in May. So there is a great percentage of the parish who would see no change should this pass. Sheriff Wright?
If I may just say just a couple things.
Yes, sir, please.
Not going to keep you long. First of all, let me just say that we have been a partner with the school board for a long time. And this is something we continue to do. We enjoy doing it. I've enjoyed working with Mr. Wascom and Dr. Eloy. And we do have a lot on our hands, and a lot of things have changed. And the problem that we're having is personnel. We have 10 resource officers right now that are at the schools, and you need another 5 more. I don't have another 5 more. You know how hard it is to recruit law enforcement, and you know how hard it is for people to watch a TV and saying that if I was in this situation, I'm gonna have to go through that door and I'm gonna probably get shot and killed. It's different times, and we have to adjust and we have to do what we can do, but we have limitations too. And I think we have pulled our fair share. I really believe it, and we're gonna continue to do that. I want everybody to know that, but we can't do it by ourselves. We just cannot do it. And you throw in 75%, but the actual numbers, so that everybody will understand what I'm talking about, is it costs about $900,000 a year for these resource officers. That's a round figure. We get reimbursed about $300,000 from the school board. So each year, for I don't know how many years, that other $600,000 has just come out of our budget. And with everything like we talked about, recessions, and I mean, we're facing the same thing. Our gas prices have already doubled. And you can know how many miles we put on, the cars. And I'm not here complaining. It's just things that, I don't know that you're aware of. It is just hard to recruit right now. And the problem is, too, we've had, like in Red River Parish, we've lost 7 or 8 of our patrol deputies because they can pay $10,000 more a year than what we can pay. And why is it? Red River Parish, Haynesville Shell. They've got plenty of money. We've lost our deputies to DeSoto. We're down so far on our patrol deputies that it's just, I can't move any from there and put them in the resource. I have more resource officers in school during the day than I have patrol officers trying to patrol 900 miles. And so there's a lot of things that, I'll be glad to try to answer any questions that you have. But it's something that, we're willing to work with y'all all we can. The kids are important to us. I don't have any, I got grandkids. I got 12 grandkids, and none of them are here. But I'm hoping that where they go to school, they're having the same discussion and are trying to resolve this so that they will be safe there. And that's what we're trying to do here.
Sheriff Wright, thank you. And again, I think we really appreciate y'all starting this process and getting it rolling. I think this is going to be a journey. I don't think we have all the answers immediately, but the points that you bring out are very important, especially personnel. And I think every law enforcement agency is facing the same thing you are.
They are. They really are. And we may lose 3 to the state police. The state police have a big drive now on trying to recruit already academy post-certified employees so they can build up their agency, in which they can pay more than we can too. And so, money is always an issue. It is always an issue, and it's really, really hitting us hard when we lose these guys. And I hate to say it, but the younger generation, you offer them $3,000 or $4,000 more, they'll move to New York, not realizing that it'll cost them 3 times that in gas. But that's what we're dealing with this day and time. But I do appreciate everybody's help and their consideration, and feel free to call me if that's allowed. And if you need facts, stats, I'm not real sure how the sheriff's department ended up with 100% of the resource officers, and kind of goes back to some things in the past that I'm not going to, but we'll do the best we can. But as of right now, the school is going to start, and we're going to be 5 resource officers down, because having a resource officer to jump from 3 schools, from one to another, I just don't think from a security standpoint that's acceptable anymore. And I tell everybody, my biggest fear is the liability, not only the loss of life, but the liability issue these resource officers present to us. And you've been watching on TV recently and what happened over in Uvalde and how some didn't do what everybody's saying they should have done. And that's going to result in multiple lawsuits from now on. So really, the resource officers, it's a real big liability. We watch it, we try to train, we educate, but at the end of the day, we have to have a resource officer that is willing to go through that door and either get shot or shoot the guy that's killing the kids. And that's the bottom line. Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you to the sheriff, because he has been an excellent partner. Him and Mr. Dunn both have. We've been talking about this for a while, and it's it's not an easy discussion to have, and a lot of times money is involved. But they have been so supportive and such good partners with the school district. So I appreciate you, Sheriff.
You bet.
I do want to make one clarification. Mr. Benefield, you had mentioned, thank you, Sheriff, for getting the ball rolling. He did not start this ball rolling. He did not come to us asking for a tax or anything of the sort. All of this came from a community discussion that originated from the Louisiana school that included elected officials, a few board members, NSU, the mayor. It was a whole group of people who got together and realized the need for this. And so, Sheriff, thank you so much for your partnership that you've offered through the years, and you are greatly, greatly appreciated. But I didn't want anyone in the public thinking you came to us asking for this tax, because that is not what happened.
Can I make one more point of clarification? Because I do appreciate that we have a board that's so thoughtful and doesn't jump in and say, yeah, let's go throw a tax on the people, and we're being very cautious and aware of the economy and aware of all those things. But I do also want to make sure that everyone knows that in those meetings, this wasn't the first thought. Many of the community members first brought up grants and federal dollars. What we know right now is we know nothing about grants. We have a possibility of a DOJ grant next year, but we don't know about the ability to have that in perpetuity. We also, there have been the rumors and the discussions about the federal government possibly, when Congress meets in the fall, that they would do something, but we don't know what that would be. And there was one member of the community, it was an educator, who said something about, they said, really they looked at this as a grassroots effort, because it doesn't matter what Baton Rouge does, it doesn't matter what Washington, D.C. does, because those things, y'all know, right now, D.C. and Baton Rouge are flush, and they're throwing money at us left and right. But what happens when those one-time dollars go away? And so I love the quote from one of my favorite comedians, but I think he's not the first one to say it. That's all politics are local politics. And if we take care of Natchitoches ourselves, then we don't have to worry about the craziness in Baton Rouge and the craziness in D.C. That being said, I know y'all have a very difficult task before y'all, because y'all are taking this on in the midst of election season, and I appreciated especially what Reverend Harris said, that he's always going to do what's right no matter the cost, because we don't want to be melodramatic about this, but were you to watch CNN or Fox News that day that Uvalde happened, it's hard not to be dramatic about these things. So I appreciate y'all's intentionality and thoughtfulness on this matter.
Okay, any other questions or comments before we move on? Okay, the next item on the agenda would be the superintendent's report, and you'll introduce our principal.
Yes, I have one item before I introduce Ms. Christy Eichel over at the Natchitoches Virtual Academy. I just want to let everyone know on the board, we had COVID leave 2 years ago. We renewed it last year, and it is now run out. I did a poll of about 30 superintendents, and there is not a parish that I am aware of in the state of Louisiana that is continuing COVID leave into this next year. In fact, the majority of those 30 parishes discontinued it last year. So unless the board has a desire to vote in a third year, which Mr. Wassom's probably eyebrows are raising because there's not the funding for that. If you recall, that funding came out of ESSER, and that was only for 2 years. This would be the third year of COVID leave. So we would be funding, people would be taking their personal leave or personal sick leave rather, for if they are quarantined. Again, other parishes are doing this. Also realize that the quarantine time is much shorter than it's ever been at 5 days. So the burden is not as much as it was prior to now. So I wanted to mention that to y'all. And then also let Reverend Harris know that we yesterday connected the Echo Ride link on the website, and y'all brought that up in the last meeting. Without any further ado, though, I'd like to bring up the amazing, the wonderful, the hilarious Miss Christy Eichel. She is a rock star. She is over at Natchitoches Virtual Academy, and she's building that program from the ground up, and she's doing a fantastic job, and she's going to share some information with y'all.
Thank you, Dr. Eloy. Good evening.
Good evening.
Try to put it right here. Sorry. All right, I do have a few highlights that I would like to share with you guys pertaining to Natchitoches Virtual Academy. As Dr. Eloy said, this was our first year that we just completed. We had a lot of wonderful things happen. This was also a learning year for us, and so I'm really excited to share the great things that we have going on at Natchitoches Virtual Academy. The first thing that I have to share with you guys is that we were able to help the district regain or gain 11 students from either the private sector, home study programs, and or other virtual programs. And we also did receive 2 of our students from LSMSA. And so we were just so proud to be able to help bring those students back into Natchitoches Parish School Board. The next thing I have to highlight for you guys is our STAR 360 scores for our students in grades K through 8. Of course, we have not received their LEAP scores back yet. For our early literacy, our kindergarten students, we have 67% of those students showed significant growth. And with that being said, by significant growth, I mean 30 points or more. However, some of them may still be a little bit below average, but they did show significant growth. So we were very proud of that, to say that they were virtual students in kindergarten. STAR reading, our 3rd grade students, 100% of those students ended the year at basic or mastery, and the numbers in the parentheses are the number of students who had either or. 100% of our 4th grade students ended the year with basic or mastery. 75% of our 2nd grade students showed significant growth from January to May 2022. 63% of our 6th grade students ended the year with basic mastery, and we had 1 advance. 60% of our 5th grade students ended the year with basic mastery, and we also had 1 advance in 5th grade as well. For 7th grade, we had 60% of those students on STAR reading to end the year with basic or mastery, and 56% of our 8th grade students ended the year with basic mastery, and we also had 1 advance there. For STAR math, we had 100% of our 3rd grade students end the year with basic, 60% of our 5th grade students ended the year with basic or mastery, and 50% of our 4th grade students ended the year with basic. We are looking forward to looking at those LEAP scores when they come in, as STAR does align to the LEAP 2025 test. For our high school testers, for the fall, we had 100% of our Algebra 1 testers score basic or mastery. 69% of our English 2 testers scored basic or mastery, and 67% of our geometry testers scored basic or mastery. In the spring, we had 100% of our 8th grade Algebra 1 testers score basic or mastery on the Algebra 1 test. 100% of our English 2 testers scored basic or mastery. 100% of our geometry testers also scored basic or mastery. 75% of our biology testers scored basic or mastery. And 60% of our English 1 testers scored basic, and 56% of our U.S. history testers scored basic or mastery. For our high school ACT highlights, we had 60% of our 11th grade students who tested for ACT in March 2022 received a composite score of 18 or higher. And for our dual enrollment highlights, we did have several students who did dual enrollment. We had 3 students to do dual enrollment through NSU, and they were all successful with their courses. And we also had 1 student in the fall semester enroll at CLTCC for CNA class, and she was very successful. She also was able to work in her field as a CNA for Hospice of Natchitoches, and she began working in January of 2020. She was a midterm graduate. Redirection program highlights. We had 20 students successfully pass 75% to 100% of their courses for the 21-22 school year, and they were promoted to the next grade level. We had 8 students who were successful in returning and remaining at their home-based school through their re-entry hearing for the 21-22 school year. We had 2 redirection students and their parents who have opted to stay at Natchitoches Virtual Academy for the 22-23 school year, and I am proud to say that those 2 students did well enough that they do meet the requirements for our GPA to now become a selective admissions student for this next school year. And we also had one of those dual enrollment students was also in redirect, and he also was able to do well in his class with Northwestern while in the program. Our graduation rate, we were able to help to assist 100% of our 14 seniors to graduate on time from Natchitoches Central and Lakeview high schools. And so none of this could be possible without our students that worked hard, as well as our parents. We had some awesome and involved parents, awesome and hardworking students, and our dedicated teachers, and I have their pictures there. They spent the time. We started RTI. It was a building year, it was a learning year, but we were all in it together. And so that's all that I have for you guys from Natchitoches Virtual Academy.
I'm sure some yes, please. I'm sure there's some questions from board members or comments, but I do want to say this is an example of when virtual is done correctly and methodically and with the right leader, it can be done successfully. And support, yes. So thank you. You saw all those numbers. The lowest you saw at times was 50%, but most of it was 67 in 100% percentile. Those, if we gave that school a score, because they're a program they don't get when they feed other school scores, they'd be an A or a B school for sure.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Eloy. And thank you to the board. I thank you for all of your support. Because this was our first year, so I felt the support of the board as well as Dr. Eloy and the district personnel. Thank you.
Great job.
I wear your shirt. I wear the shirt you gave me around town all the time. It's my favorite.
Oh, great.
I wanted to ask, approximately how many students were in attended Virtual Academy last year?
Yes, ma'am. We started with 38 to begin with, and then COVID happened. We went up to over 200 at one point, went back down, but we ended the year with 153.
Okay. Yeah. And when you say redirection, are these students that were in the school setting and were redirected to virtual? Is that what you meant when you said redirection?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, they were given the option with Ms. Du Bois, and many parents this year chose redirect virtual over. Some chose to go to MPTCC, so it was kind of their option.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great job. Thank you. Any other questions?
Well, I have a question. I guess it's maybe directed toward Dr. Eloy as well as yourself. Can we have students from other districts that would benefit from?
So a student can't be dual enrolled in 2 different districts, so they would have to drop, and then they would still, even though they're virtual, they have to supply us with an in-district address. Otherwise, we would get just as mad at other parishes trying to scoop those out. Now, the one that doesn't have to follow that is the state.
Louisiana Academy and Virtual Academy. and
They
things,
can pull
right?
them from all over the state. So they are our competition. And so that's why Ms. Aisha's trying to provide the best thing, because someone in Natchitoches could go to that Louisiana Virtual Academy, but we want them to say, hey, we're just as good, but
That's
we're
right.
better because we're actually in parish and you can come sit down with a person and talk to them. And so we can provide a better service, we believe. Nothing against them, but
Right. That's what I'd like to see.
yes, sir.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, also super quick, under the superintendent's report, we have Ms. Laura Lyles with the STEAM grant to address us for a moment. Just a moment.
Good evening, everybody. I haven't been in this room in quite some time. I'm so thankful for the work that y'all do and keep up with you on social media and through communication with some of you. So thank you so much for the work you do for our parish. We really appreciate it. We are coming up on the deadline for our STEAM grant. So when we come and present a big check, we are ready to receive those applications for some very innovative teachers within the school system. The grant is actually for parish-wide schools, so any school within the parish can apply, including any of our NPSB schools. So I brought some flyers. I just wanted to publicly announce that we're a couple of weeks away from the deadline, July 31st, and if you guys could help me get the word out, I'd really appreciate it. We've had some really, really great applications in the past, and we're looking forward to receiving a lot of great ones again this year. It's up to $7,000 from the Chamber Education Fund, and our businesses support that. So thank you for helping us get the word out. I'll pass these around.
Thank you so much. Okay, old business, item 3A, demolition of Head Start building on MLK Drive. Mr. Matwire, do you have anything else?
No,
Okay. 3B, declare MLK Head Start surplus.
I would like to make a motion that we declare MLK Head Start as surplus and start the process of tearing the building down.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any discussion before we vote? Okay, I do have a question. The motion was stated by Mr. Matwire to start the process of tearing it down, but the motion on board docs is just to declare it surplus and the contents. So,
I think that's what it
Yes,
should be.
it's written that way. If you'll, when we get to finance, there was actually an agenda item to grant permission to advertise for bids for the demolition.
okay. So should we restate that motion?
Yeah, 'cause
I mean, it's there. If you
Okay.
want to restate it for the public record, you can, but it's,
just declare it surplus.
Okay. So the motion is to declare MLK Head Start building located at 415 MLK Drive and contents thereof as surplus. So, roll call vote, please.
yes, ma'am. Mr. Danzy,
Yes.
Mr. Matwire,
Yes.
Mr. Benefiel,
Yes.
Mr. Garner,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mrs. Guidros,
Yes.
Mrs. Broadway,
Yes.
Mrs. McGaskey,
Yes.
Ms. Palmer,
Yes.
Ms. Phelps,
Yes,
and Ms. Harvey.
Yes.
Motion passed.
thank you. So, new business, we've already handled that, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. You've all had the opportunity to review the agenda.
I will offer.
Okay.
I will offer.
We have an offer by Mr. Harris.
I'll second.
A second by Ms. Broadway. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Informational reports, I believe that we were all presented with adequate information, but are there any questions that need to be addressed from item 6, any of the reports? Okay. Item number 7, Finance, Facility, Services, and Insurance, Mr. Danzy.
Item 7A, permission to advertise for bids for the Nchs digital signage. And I'll offer that.
I'll second.
Okay, we have an offer by Mr. Danzy, a second by Ms. Broadway. Is there any discussion?
Yes, ma'am. Funding, where will this funding come out of? This BRE money?
No, this is Title I.
I don't want, okay.
Okay, any other questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Danzy?
Yes.
Mr. Matoyer?
Yes.
Mr. Benefiel?
Yes.
Mr. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Gidros?
Yes.
Mrs. Broadway?
Yes.
Mrs. McGaskey?
Yes.
Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Ms. Phelps?
Yes.
And Ms. Harvey?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Item 7B, permission to advertise for bids demolition of MLK Head Start building.
I'll offer.
Okay, we have an offer
I'll second.
and a second offer by Mr. Matoyer, a second by Mr. Harris. Is there any discussion regarding this item?
How soon will this demolition start? Didn't we talk about needing to hold off on this?
Well, this would be to put out to bid, and then we'd receive the bids and all that, but then we'd, I think Mr. Wascom said after next month, he'd be able to see what, if any, surplus we had in the budget, to be able to apply to this. Is that correct, Mr. Wascom?
We did say there was a cost of about $10,000 to put the bids out there.
Okay, any other questions or discussion, concerns?
And then even if you just started with abating, we're gonna have to do that anyway, right?
Well, it's
We
cheaper
would-
to abate and demolish at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
but you could separate those two events.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of, the $10,000 has to do with the DEQ permitting, the,
Right.
hiring the right consultant, which is, Altech gentleman out of Shreveport. He manages the whole process, and it's quite a much more lengthy process than just tearing down something else. It has to do with the asbestos part. But it is cheaper on us to do both abatement, which is one crew essentially, and another crew comes in and demolish it. We just had one company at Clutcheville do it all. It's much cheaper that way.
Okay, anyone else? All right, we have a motion by Mr. Matoyer, a second by Mr. Harris. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Danzy?
Yes.
Mr. Matoyer?
Yes.
Mr. Benefiel?
Yes.
Mr. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Gidros?
Yes.
Mrs. Broadway?
Yes.
Mrs. McGaskey?
Yes.
Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Ms. Phelps?
Yes.
And Ms. Harvey?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Item 7C, permission to advertise for bids for the technology truck.
I'll offer it.
Second. Okay, we have an offer by Mr. Eugene Garner, a second by Ms. Palmer. Is there any discussion related to this item?
What type of truck would you say? Truck? What type of truck?
Is it a Peterbilt or a pickup truck?
Because it could be
Uh,
a
we're-
small truck or a big truck. We do that.
We're looking for a 3/4 ton
Okay.
pickup truck that'll be able to tow the trailer that we already have when it's loaded to capacity.
Okay.
ESSER funding.
Weren't we able to piggyback that with some of the other parishes? Is that?
That ended up not being a state item. Isn't that correct?
No, none of the dealerships actually bid on the state contracts that were advertised in '21 because of vehicle shortages. They were losing money by selling them at fleet prices. So there basically was no state contract.
Right.
And I know you say 3/4 ton, but I've noticed people coming at the shop saying you can sometimes get a 1 ton for about the same price as you get a 3/4 ton. So if you can do that, you have your bigger truck and you'll be able to tow more with that 1 ton than that 3/4 ton.
When I write up the bid, I'm not going to specify 3/4 1 ton. What I'm going to specify is towing capacity and trailer brakes on it. So if they come back and offer us a half-ton that's a crew cab and can tow 14,000 pounds. I don't know if that's out there. You know, that's what we'll get. But we'll go with the lowest bid that meets our specs for our trailer.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion or questions? We have an offer by Mr. Garner, a second by Ms. Palmer. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Danzy?
Yes.
Mr. Matoir?
Yes.
Mr. Benefiel?
Yes.
Mr. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Guidros?
Yes.
Mrs. Broadway?
Yes.
Mrs. McGaskey?
Yes.
Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Ms. Phelps?
Yes.
And Ms. Harvey?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Item 7D, take appropriate action on a milk bid award for the 22-23 school year, and I'll offer that.
Second.
Okay, we have an offer and a second. Is there any discussion or questions? Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Danzy?
Yes.
Mr. Matoir?
Yes.
Mr. Benefiel?
Yes.
Mr. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Oh, yes.
Mrs. Guidros?
Yes.
Mrs. Broadway?
Yes.
Mrs. McGaskey?
Yes.
Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Ms. Phelps?
Yes.
And Ms. Harvey?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Item 7E, take appropriate action for paper and cleaning products bid awards for 22-23 school year, and these are by line items. We have, on your sheet, you will show the preferential bids Ms. Hicks gave us, and I'll offer that.
I'll second.
Okay, we have an offer and a second by Mr. Danzy and Mr. Harris. Are there any questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. All those who oppose? Motion carries.
Item number 7F, minor salary schedule adjustments. Mr. Wascom explained that on Tuesday, and I'll offer that.
Okay, we have an offer by Mr. Danzy,
I'll second.
a second by Ms. Harvey. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Danzy?
Yes.
Mr. Matoir?
Yes.
Mr. Benefiel?
Yes.
Mr. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Guidros?
Yes.
Mrs. Broadway?
Yes.
Mrs. McGaskey?
Yes.
Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Ms. Phelps?
Yes.
Ms. Harvey?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Item 7G, canvass April 30th, 2022 returns. Mr. Wascom?
Just the last part. Just that last part.
Very
please.
bottom.
Last page,
Correct one in?
bottom paragraph,
Keep going to the bottom.
That's at the bottom? Okay, yeah.
very
All the
bottom.
way to the bottom.
Even though Billy tortured you on Tuesday.
There you go.
There it is, all right. I, the undersigned secretary, was actually Dr. Eloy, the undersigned secretary of the Parish School Board of the Parish of Natchitoches, State of Louisiana, the governing authority of the Natchitoches, of the Parish of Natchitoches, State of Louisiana, the parish, for school purposes, do hereby certify that the foregoing pages constitute a true and correct copy of the ordinance adopted by the school board on July 14, 2022, providing for the levy. I think I'm actually too far down. This is the actual copy of the adoption. We have to read the paragraph.
You
up
got
here.
it within the
Oh, that is
parish
it?
of
Yeah, that's it,
Natchitoches, State, Louisiana.
Okay, this
You're
is
there.
the one certified, okay. Foregoing page to be true and correct copy of the ordinance adopted by the school board on July 14th, 2022, providing the levy within the parish of Natchitoches, state of Louisiana, of a 1% tax, sales and use tax, the tax upon the sale of retail, the use, the lease or rental, the consumption, and the storage for use or consumption of tangible personal property, and upon the sale of services in said parish, and and for the assessment, collection, payment thereof, and the dedication of proceeds of said tax, and the purpose
for which proceeds of the tax may be expended, said tax having been authorized at a special election held in the parish on April 30th, 2022. So I offer that as the canvassing paperwork.
I move we accept it.
I second the motion to accept the canvas from Mr. Danzy.
Okay, we have an offer by Mr. Danzy, a second by Mr. Benefield. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Danzy?
Yes.
Mr. Matwire?
Yes.
Mr. Benefield?
Yes.
Mr. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Guidros?
Yes.
Mrs. Broadway?
Yes.
Mrs. McGaskey?
Yes.
Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Ms. Phelps?
Yes.
And Ms. Harvey?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Item 7H, budget revision. That's revised general funds and budget revision. I'll offer that one.
I'll second.
Okay, we have an offer by Mr. Danzy, a second by Mr. Harris. Any questions or discussion regarding this matter? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Yes, ma'am, give me just a second. Okay. Mr. Danzy?
Yes.
Mr. Matwire?
Yes.
Mr. Benefield?
Yes.
Mr. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Guidros?
Yes.
Mrs. Broadway?
Yes.
Mrs. McGaskey?
Yes.
Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Ms. Phelps?
Yes,
And Ms. Harvey?
Yes.
Motion passed.
thank
Madam
you.
President, that concludes finance.
Thank you very much. Executive report, Mrs. Broadway.
Okay, item 9A was the report by Ms. Pinckney for the Direct Student Services. And that was just a report. So item 9B, the NSU MOU for the 2022-2023 school year. That was also presented by Ms. Pinckney. And this is a, just an annual,
We need to.
you're right, resolution, sorry.
Okay, is there an offer?
Yeah. I'll offer, okay.
Second.
Okay, there's an offer by Mrs. Broadway, a second by Ms. McGaskey. Is there any discussion or questions regarding this item? Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Danzy?
Yes.
Mr. Matwire?
Yes.
Mr. Benefield?
Yes.
Mr. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Guidros?
Yes.
Mrs. Broadway?
Yes.
Mrs. McGaskey?
Yes.
Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Ms. Phelps?
Yes.
And Ms. Harvey?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay. Item 9C was discussion about the Old Gorham School and the agreement with the Natchitoches Parish Council, and it was our lawyer's advice that we did not play a role in that discussion. So we'll move on to item 9D, which is the quarantine policy update. Dr. Eloy.
Okay. Do you have anything to add? I'm sorry.
And I'll second.
Going in. Okay, we have an offer by Mr. Matwire and a second by Ms. Broadway. Is there any discussion or questions regarding this matter? Okay, if we could have a roll call vote?
Mr. Danzy?
Yes.
Mr. Matwire?
Yes.
Mr. Benefield?
Yes.
Mr. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Guidros?
Yes.
Mrs. Broadway?
Yes.
Mrs. McGaskey?
Yes.
Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Ms. Phelps?
Yes.
And Ms. Harvey?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, item 9E was the COVID-19 testing. Dr. Eloy, or I'll offer.
Okay, we have an offer, and do we have a second?
Second. No.
I think Mr. Matwire beat you to it, so we have an offer and a second. If we could have a, I'm sorry, is there any discussion regarding this or questions?
Do you want to be tested, is that what you're saying?
That's okay. That's okay. Okay, if there's no other denial of testing, then we can have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Danzy?
Yes.
Mr. Matwire?
Yes.
Mr. Benefield?
Yes.
Mr. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Guidros?
Yes.
Mrs. Broadway?
Yes.
Mrs. McGaskey?
Yes.
Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Ms. Phelps?
Yes.
And Ms. Harvey?
Yes.
Motion passed.
All right, that concludes the executive report.
Thank you so much, and if there's no other business to come before the board, we'll entertain a motion.
I second.
Meeting adjourned.